Hi, everyone. I'm Dave Stelzl, and of course, author of The House in the Cloud and creator of the Security Sales Mastery Training Program. And today, what I want to do is I just want to go through quickly the security assessment process. So, I recently wrote an article. You can click on a link below this video to get to that article, or you may have gotten to this video from the article. But the article details how to overcome objections. So when you're out there, and particularly in the MSP market, if you're calling on mid-sized companies or small business, you're probably running into this issue where you've got a great solution. Perhaps they've already got a provider, or maybe they don't, but it's somebody who doesn't have what you have. And so you know you can get in there. You know you've got a better opportunity, a better offering, maybe more comprehensive offering, or whatever it is. But as I talk with salespeople who have better offerings, they continue to run into this roadblock that yours is not affordable, and so you start bickering over $5 or $10 more per workstation, or even $30 or $40 maybe. But the price difference is easily justifiable in your mind because you know your solution is better. And so we hit this wall where we can't close the business, and it just turns into a very long sales process. So in the article, I explained that if you stop thinking about MSP and you stop thinking about MSP features and the monitoring of networks and servers and all that kind of stuff, and you start thinking about data, start thinking about the most important asset that every company has. It is their data. Remember, today's oil is data. Okay, the data of today is the oil of yesterday. So the company that has data, think about Facebook, one of the most valuable companies in the U.S. valuation-wise. What do they have? They have data. And you know what? They have free data. Data that we gave them for free is now worth, millions and millions of dollars. So what I want to do is I want to take you through a very simple tool that we use called the assessment, security assessment, risk assessment, and it's a different approach. So if you do security assessments, or you've done some other kind of gap analysis or compliance analysis or whatever it is you've done in your business, this is a little bit different, and so I want to take you through it. And of course, there's a template that you can download in the article, and we'll also post that in the comments below the video here as well, so that you can get that. Okay, so it's a free template. It doesn't cost you anything to get it, but what it does is it takes you through a conversion that we've seen work in very, very successfully, okay? So the average assessment conversion rate, and when I say assessment conversion rate, it doesn't matter if it's a paid assessment or a free assessment. The fact is, when you do an assessment, usually of any kind, you're wanting to convert to something else, to a remediation project or to a managed service company. And certainly if you're in the managed service business, then you want to convert to a managed service contract, okay? Now, if you think about the sales process, usually there's some messaging going on, and I hope you're marketing. I hope you're reaching out through social media, even mailings perhaps, and webinars and things like that, whatever it is you do, but you're trying to get appointments, and you go to those appointments and you talk to them about what you do, and you show them your stuff, and maybe you've got data sheets and all the things that you do, or maybe they even contacted you because their current provider is just not that great. And so now you're sharing with them what it is you do, and then you're wanting them to sign a contract, and there's this big gap, this big hurdle from, okay, we're meeting, we're enjoying some conversation, we're showing you our stuff, it looks good, now I want you to spend money. And there's a pause, and it's like, well, let us think about it, send us a proposal, and then things just go into a black hole. And it's because there's a gap that sits between marketing and sales. And there's a lot of sales proponents out there that say you just need to pound the phones, pound the people. But Jeffrey Moore, and actually Michael Bosworth even before that, addressed this in a lot of their writings. If you remember the book Solution Selling, Michael Bosworth, okay, in there he talks about the idea that really maybe 3% of the people that are out there that you could possibly call on are actually looking for your solution right now. 3%. It's not a big percent, and when you look around and see how much competition there is, 3% is a small number to divide up between all those companies. So what do we do? Well, what we want to do is we want to somehow create the business opportunity, and the way we do that is by looking at the 97%. All right, now in order to do that, we can't go from a sales meeting all the way to a deal. We need something in the middle, and I call this the marketing sales gap. Okay, the marketing and sales gap exists because marketing is out there getting leads. Maybe you've got a landing page and they're downloading an ebook or something like that, and you're expecting that name to show up in your CRM, hand it over to sales. They should call, they should go visit, they should close, and it doesn't work that way. So, how does it work? Well, the purpose of marketing is to get somebody to the point where they're ready to have a sales conversation. And so the marketing is actually not done until that person is asking questions. Now, the salesperson needs to be involved here because you can't do that on a landing page or in a social media post. So instead what you need is you need a salesperson who's going to follow up, or some process that's going to follow up, that's going to take that person from an awareness all the way to ready to have a conversation, what I call the ideal sales conversation. Okay, and the assessment is what sits there in the middle. So if you think about the conversion process, there's a message that goes to an educational session, which is your meeting, your initial conversation. And in that meeting or that conversation, or it could be a webinar, it could be a lunch and learn, you're communicating a need. Now, if you've been reading the paper at all, you know everybody's got a security need. It's just that they don't know it in many cases, especially in the small business market, mid-market, and business people. Okay, because they're not watching all this stuff. They're thinking, yeah, it's out there, but I don't see it here. And so the marketing job, and perhaps the marketing job of the salesperson or somebody, is to get in there and start communicating to that person that there's a problem, probably, and here's why. Now, I go through that in my book, The House, the Cloud, and the Coverage Model. And in there, you'll want to take a look at that and see how you make that happen. But once you get somebody truly interested, you still can't take them all the way to the sale, because now there's all kinds of questions like, well, how much does it cost? And you start negotiating over price, and your margins get reduced and so forth. So what do? You drive them into an assessment. Now, if you do any typical kind of assessment, like the ones that a lot of the firewall manufacturers do automatically, sort of, what you're going to end up with is a 50-page report or a 20-page report that looks more like an eye chart than it does an executive document. And that's not going to close either. So what we've done is we've put together a simple document here, and I'm going to show that to you. Walk through it with you in this video in the next couple of minutes. Okay, it's very simple. You can download it. It's just a few pages. I think with the header pages and everything, it might be 9 pages, but you can skinny this thing down to 5 to 7 pages easily by eliminating those pages. And I've done this in PowerPoint, so it's easy to modify. Now, I just want to make a note about that. I've seen a lot of these documents are done in Word. I understand why, okay, because Word sounds like it's a good thing to write stuff that has words in. But you know what? It's not that great for this kind of report, because we need the ability to move text around and to format it in a way that is appealing to the eye, easy to read, and especially for those executives and business owners that are busy and are just skimmers. Okay, and that is the majority of your audience today. In fact, they might even want to watch a video. But, somebody actually pointed out to me the other day that skimmers actually don't even like videos that much, because they just want to skim the headlines, skim the bullet points. And so you'll see in this document, it is written at that level. Okay, now, the most important thing about this document is the impact likelihood graph, which you'll see on the right-hand side of the page. Okay, impact being the x-axis and y being the likelihood. Now, what this is it's a listing of their key assets. So remember, digital assets are the most important thing that a company has today. And what we've done is we've gone out and we have measured how much risk they have by first identifying what are the most critical assets. Now, who has that information? The executive does. Okay, if you ask a business owner what data is most important to your company, which applications are most critical to this business, to running it, the daily business, they're going to tell you, well, this, and this are our important things. When you get into a larger company, you're probably going to want to consult somebody a little different, like a COO or a CFO, or even some of the vice presidents who might run a division, say in a mid-market company. Okay, it gets a lot more complex when you get into the enterprise, so we're not going to talk about that right now. But I did used to run an enterprise assessment team for a global company, and I can tell you that the process is very similar. It's just a little more complex. So we're going to try and keep it simple here. Now, once I understand what those critical applications are, Then I want to know from the executive some critical things. I want to know things like, how much downtime can you afford with this data? Okay, how much data can you afford to lose? For instance, if this disk crashes or this server becomes unavailable and you can't get to the data, it's now corrupt. How much data can you afford to lose? What that's saying is, when did the last backup have to be? Or if the backup didn't restore completely, how bad would that be? If the system went down, that's your maximum tolerable downtime, or what we call NTD. Okay, and that's telling me how long can you be down? A day, 4 hours, 2 hours, no time? And of course, when someone initially is asked that question, they usually say, I can't be down, right? That's what I would say, I can't be down. But of course, once we start telling them how much it costs to have 100% uptime, which is really nearly impossible, we can really only move to, say, scheduled downtime is probably the best you can do. And so we hear, 5-9 uptime. But even that is quite expensive. So if you're running a 911 system, you need it, you're going to spend the money for it. On the other hand, a typical business is going to say, well, I guess if we had to and we can't afford it, we could be down for, say, 4 hours. All right. Now, that's important. Those pieces of data right there are what are going to create justification for you. Now we're going to start looking at likelihood, and there's a sequence of things that we go through in terms of who we talk to. Now, I'm not going to go through the assessment process in too much detail here, but basically we want to talk to executives. And you can get more detail on this, by the way, in the Sales Mastery Program that I teach, which is on my website, stelzl.us, which you see on the slide here. So if you go there and go to training, you'll see there are classes that I actually teach on how to do all this. But at a high level, I need to speak to the executives to understand the assets. I need to speak to the end users or the power users to understand how they work, where they create data from, where that data goes, who accesses it, and how important it is, okay? And once I have those two pieces of information, then I can do something which is actually quite unique but shouldn't be in the assessment world, and that is go back to my technical people. So a salesperson can do this first half by themselves, can go back to a technical team and can say, okay, here's what's important to them, here's the kind of business they're in, here's how they work, the workflow, if you will, or the life cycle of their data. What has to be true for this company to be secure? Okay? See what I'm asking? I'm asking for a punch list of specific things to go look for inside that organization. And once I have that, now I can start to analyze that company's risk. What's the likelihood? Now, I think it's Donald Hubbard who wrote in fact, I have the book here somewhere. Let me just make sure I got his name correct here. Oh, it's Doug. Doug Hubbard. Okay, wrote You Can Measure Anything, or How to Measure Anything. And in there, he makes a really important statement, and that is you can't figure out the likelihood that, for instance, or how likely email is to be compromised or not be secure if you don't list the things that are relevant threats. And so my next thing really is to take a look at what those relevant threats are. And once I understand what those relevant threats are, then I can begin to predict what the security of that, or what the likelihood is, or the risk level is for that particular asset. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at it from an expert opinion, and I'm saying, there's a 90% likelihood, or there's a 100% likelihood. What does that mean? It means that that system has already been compromised, or we at least have symptoms. Maybe it's 99.9% sure that there are symptoms of malware compromise or abuse or something in that particular system. Okay, that's what I'm ranking here. And I'm ranking it across each individual application, considering maybe a weighted average is the way I do it, given certain threats, okay, which are easy to find what the average is online. I can now do a weighted average based on how they've actually set theirs up. Are they average? Are they better than average? Are they less than average? And again, it's my opinion. I do have a formula that I work through in my course. I work through that with people. But even without the formula, you can take a pretty good guess if you understand how security controls work, what the threats are out there, and you have a feel for the fact that, for instance, 47% of companies this year to date so far have reported ransomware attacks. Okay, just as an example. That's average, okay? So if they're better than average, then they're going to have a less percent likelihood, although there will still be a likelihood. And if they're worse than others, there'll be a higher percent likelihood. So on this page, what I've done is I've charted that thing, and I've shown it in a pictorial graph. Notice there are numbers on here. And the reason there are numbers is because executives don't like stoplights. Okay, it doesn't mean anything to them. Red light, what does that mean? What is that? Okay, if I'm talking to somebody who manages money, a business owner, a CFO, or any executive that has a budget, they want to see numbers, and numbers like percentages really do work far better than stoplights do. Okay, so I've assigned specific percentages here, and it's actually even better to have odd number percentages. Okay, we call that a pattern interrupt. 90% is maybe too simple. If I had 92%, it would cause them to think, hey, this guy actually computed something. Okay, and of course, when I do a weighted average, I come up with numbers like that. Then I've got the critical assets listed here. That's a simple summary over here, and this is an executive summary, unlike most of the executive summaries I see on these big fat assessment reports that look more like eye charts and have ports and names of malware and stuff like that executives really don't care about and don't understand. Now, diving into the report a little bit deeper, what I've done here is I have taken the key issues, and notice there are only 5 issues here, 1 page worth, and I've listed them. Now, these are urgent issues, and these issues are listed in order of importance. Okay, so the very first one, suspected compromise. Okay, that should stand out. That should grab the attention of somebody. And what I'm saying here is we think there's malicious, unauthorized software activity on this particular server. Immediate action required. Okay, it's like a pipe broke in the wall. And are you going to call a plumber and maybe get 5 different quotes and maybe schedule for next week? No, right? It's leaking. It's destroying your home. And I would communicate that like that urgency here when I'm talking to this person delivering this report. Hey, you possibly have somebody in your system right now. You should have somebody fix it this afternoon. We can get someone in here, or you can do it yourself. I don't care how you do it, but it's highly likely based on our results that you've actually got a problem right now. Okay? Then we've got ransomware in here. That's a big buzzword out there, and if there's some detection or possibility or a simple way that ransomware can be introduced into this organization, we want to note that. Okay, and of course we've tied it to their MTD, their maximum tolerable downtime. Why have I done that? Because they've already told me they can only stand 4 hours of downtime. All right, and I want to make the point here that when someone tells me 4-hour downtime and it's firm, it's serious, then I want to look at their contracts and figure out what's their response time on that particular server. A lot of times, server response time from a manufacturer is 4 hours. Well, what does that mean? It means 4 hours after it goes down, the guy shows up, looks at it, and says, "Well, you got a disk crash, or you've got something or other. We're going to have to restore." Hopefully you got to restore a backup that actually works, and hopefully it's on-prem because we're not going to be able to restore from the cloud in a couple of hours, that's for sure. But 4 hours have already gone by. So what's the likelihood you'll be able to restore within 4 hours? 0, right? You're going to have to get more hardware, put a new disk in, restore the data. It's going to be a couple of days before you're back up running, configured, and things are operating the way they're supposed to be. Okay? So what we've done here is we've taken their specific digital assets, we've tied specific issues to them that we can prove, that we can demonstrate, and we have ordered them in priority. This should lead to action alone, all by itself. But I've provided some detailed analysis after that, and it's not a lot of detail, just to give them a feel for why we said that, okay? So here what I've done is I've taken their critical assets and I've taken their answers to how much downtime, how much data can I afford to lose? Is there private information like PHI or some other protected information or something compliance-oriented? And I've noted those things in these red boxes, and you can add or subtract to what's here. But basically what I've done is I've said this is what's important, this is how important it is, and so if we're not meeting these thresholds, then you have a problem. Okay? Now a detailed threat analysis. Now what I've done is I've taken some of the threats that I think they're going to experience. I think you might get hit with ransomware. Here's why. I think you might have data theft. Here's why. I think you might lose this, or that might crash or something, and here's why. Okay? And I've just listed, based on my analysis of what I saw in there, here's what I found. Okay, simple findings. And notice, again, there's not a lot of them. I've got 6 listed here. You could have a few more, a few less, but I recommend you keep it small enough so that it's easy to talk about, easy to get through. Remember, what you're really looking for in these initial assessments is an open door, an urgent issue. You're not looking for a comprehensive assessment, and that's why I like to do this as a complementary assessment. It's like the cursory blood test, the initial blood test that gets done when you go to a physical. And if there's something serious, they're going to want to do more serious tests like bone marrow tests and bigger blood panels and all that sort of thing. So the same approach can be done here. You could sell this at an inexpensive price. You could show them the deliverable. You could say, this is what we do. It's kind of like that basic blood test. You don't want to spend a lot of money unless you know there's an issue, and that's why we do it this way. You could spend thousands of dollars on blood testing, and it would be totally useless because there's no issues. So doctors usually save you some money. I don't know if they're thinking about saving money, but they do save you some money by doing the basic blood work unless they see an anomaly. And then they say, you know what, you've got to go down this road, and it's going to be more expensive, more comprehensive, more blood vials drawn, and it's going to take some more time to analyze it, and we're going to come back with a more serious, detailed report. Okay, same thing here. Okay, but if you're in the small business managed service, chances are they don't need the more expensive detailed report. Chances are what they just need is to put the right controls in place because it'll be fairly obvious. Okay, now then I've taken some of these threats and I've given them some more detail. Okay, I've given them some definitions. I've tried to write things in a language that they understand. This is not necessarily critical, but it just shows that you have some detail and that you understand what you're talking about. Okay, in this case, I told them that there was compromise, and so here I want to tell them that there actually is a name to this thing. Okay, and whatever it is, and whenever the possible infection date was, this infection, this report was written in 2017, and this is actually real data that I pulled off of an assessment that one of my clients performed. Of course, I've changed some things to make it impossible to know who that company is, but they're a small business that you've never heard of somewhere in the world. But the point is, we were able to trace back this infection, the files that are on that system, and we believe that infection's been on there since 2014. And then we describe some of the symptoms and some of the damage that is probably being done. Your data is probably being stolen. Remember, Target, when they were attacked by Albert Gonzalez, he was in there for 3 years. Okay, so this is about a 3-year period here based on when this report was written, and he was siphoning off, credit cards over time in small enough batches that nobody knew what was going on. And that same thing could be happening right here, and I might even use examples like that to show that just because you haven't seen damage doesn't mean you haven't been incurring damage. Okay? Then I've taken a short run through some of their applications, and I've talked about some of the threats to the applications. Remember, again, I'm data focused here. I'm not really talking about their networks and their servers so much. I'm really focused on their data. I don't really care where their data sits. I just care if it's secure or not. Okay? Now, in the final page, what I've done is I've related this back to the house, the cloud, and the coverage model. So if you're not familiar with that model of selling, it's a simple analogy that I use, but it's not what you think it is. It's not comparing firewalls to doors and things like that. It's a clear way of showing somebody how security works, what's most important, and why people are losing the battle. And in there, I point out that detection is the most important aspect of the security architecture. So in here, what I've done is I've related the security model, the security architecture that this company has back to that model, protection, detection, response, and I've shown them that they really don't have effective detection, and I've shown them they don't really have an effective response, which are the two most important aspects of your whole security program. And so you need to what? You need to change your approach to security, and this naturally leads to some urgent issues that must be addressed right now, as well as a path or a security maturity model, which I recommend you lay out for them in addition to this report, to show them here's where you are today and here's where you should head over, say, the next 6 to 12 months, and so they kind of budget that out. And by the way, we can put a lot of that stuff in place through our security offering, right, our managed service / MSSP offering. Okay, and what this does is it creates that ascension not only from just pure MSP, but of some of the higher value detection and security intelligence features that you might be adding and should be adding to your MSP offering right now. Okay, so in a nutshell, this is the assessment, and this sits between the educational session where I talk about why you need all this, why you need MSP, and why you need us, and why you can't do it yourself, and sign a contract. Let's do an analysis. Let's take a look at what you have. Let's look at your data. Let's see if it's at risk. And yeah, I'll tell you what, 95% of the time we find that it is indeed at risk. There's something going on that's problematic that will not meet those thresholds you've given me, the maximum tolerable downtime, the restore point objective, and so forth. So download the report, take a look at it, let us know if you have questions. Contact us through our website, and we'll be happy to help you any way we can to begin using this tool. We're converting 60 to 80% of the time when we use this report. And by the way, when we explain what this report is, we've been converting over 90% of our listeners, and we're talking decision maker level kind of people, into an assessment like this because they've never experienced this before. The end goal is to identify impact and likelihood. Impact and likelihood. And then what are we going to do with that? We're going to remediate, bring down the likelihood, and then we're going to roll them into our long-term program, maintain an acceptable level of risk. And that's really what managed services and MSSP offerings should be all about. And I'll tell you what, it's a whole lot more profitable than just monitoring computers and overseeing backups. So I hope this helps, and let me know if I can help you. Again, I'm Dave Stelzl, author of The House in the Cloud and creator of the program Security Sales Mastery Program.